Yo, welcome back to the See-Through podcast for the first solo episode of 2023. But first, pat yourself on the back for making it to this year. That's a win, and I'm glad you're here. And today's episode is going to be a fun one. In this episode, I'm going to cover, my own goals for 2023. I'm also going to cover, some articles related to health and more specifically vision. How alcohol affects our vision, how sugar affects our vision, screen time, smoking. So this is going to be a health-oriented episode. If that sounds up your alley, then this episode is right for you. First things first, where have I been? I took some time off. I hope you guys didn't mind, but I was in London and Portugal for the holidays, spending time with my wife and her family. Her family is based in London and Portugal, and aren't I lucky that that's where I get to go to spend time with family. Both very beautiful places. I love London. I'm rocking the Chelsea jacket right here that I received as a Christmas gift. I'm embracing, the London culture, and I'm embracing the Portugal culture. I've been learning a few Portuguese words, and here's a word for you, and you'll have to look it up. Bufa. Look up what the word bufa means in Portuguese. Spoiler, it means fart. Yeah, that's the words I learned. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. It was nice to take a break from computers. That's all I do is edit, podcast. So I kind of intentionally took some time off. I wasn't active on social media or anything like that, but I'm officially back. And with that said, I want to remind everyone that I have merch, see-through merch. So if you missed that announcement in episode 78, I do have merch now for sale. I have t-shirts like this one. This is the classic logo tee in gray. I have it in black and white. I have the RP for short t-shirt, as I say that a lot. And I have a see-through logo hoodie. I have a hat, coffee mug. Here we go. I'll show it to you in real life. And I'll take a sip. And on top of merch being available, I want to remind everyone that I do have a Patreon page where you can go and show support. Waiting for you there right now is 18 videos that you can only watch on Patreon. And that number of available videos will continue to grow. So go sign up for my Patreon. You can be a member of the See-Through Few, and it helps me, pay the bills here. And if you missed that merch announcement, then you might have missed my announcement for doing solo episodes. This year, 2023, each month, sticking to my bi-weekly podcast releases. One episode will be solo, one episode will be with a guest. If you're wondering why, you can go back and listen to episode 78, which will explain it. But long story short, these solo episodes let me kind of open up and you get to know me more. And also I get to cover things I can't cover with guests, like current events and certain specific topics that I want to cover that relate more to me versus who I'm talking to. But before I start going into what I want to talk about, since this is my solo episode, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I did a clean shave for you guys today. My idea for that is clean shave, clean face, clean slate, new year. Ha ha, ha ha. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm wearing sunglasses because my eyes are really sensitive today. Probably has a lot to do with the lifestyle I've been living with my traveling, which has been involving a lot of booze and lack of sleep and just huge amounts of sugar and French fries or chips, as they say in the UK. But yeah, I think I've kind of been wearing and tearing my body here lately, and I'm kind of stoked for this kind of new recharging month of January. I'm doing a dry January and all of that. But before I go all into that, because I'm going to cover those articles like I mentioned, I want to talk to you about being spread thin. It's almost the same feeling as being burned out. But to me, being burned out is like you've been doing one specific thing too much. And how I've been feeling is like a little bit overwhelmed in the sense of I realize that I'm a people pleaser. I have a hard time telling people no. I want to be liked by everyone. Like that's a goal of mine, to be liked by everyone, which is good. It's worked in my favor. You know, I've always been a likable person, but sometimes in order to be liked, you know, I'll pretend that I'm happy when I'm not, you know, things like that. And, you know, that's not very transparent of me, you know, which is something that I like to, preach about here. So I need to practice what I preach. I think it's simple. I just think I don't like letting people down. And I like controlling my self-image. I like having control over how people perceive me. And I always want it to be in like a really positive way, really positive light. But the reality is I'm a human. I have flaws. You know, just because I make a podcast doesn't mean I'm something special, you know. But yeah, I worry about if I'm liked or not. And as this podcast has grown, the more people I feel like I need to please. You know, I'm trying to be a good, husband, brother, son, dog, dad, co-worker, employee, podcaster, person, the list goes on and on. It's hard to be good at all those things and to not lose touch with friends, to not lose touch with yourself in the process of maintaining all these different things you have going on in your life. But I'm bringing it up because I think in this year, especially with me doing these solo episodes, I'm going to try to be less of a people pleaser. And what I mean by that is I'm going to have to take some risk in terms of what I talk about. And what I talk about sometimes may offend you. You may disagree with me, And as a people pleaser, I've always tried to kind of walk on eggshells, and I cover a topic that I want to cover, but I would try to do it in a way where I'm not pissing people off. I probably failed a few times without even knowing it. But at the same time, I just being honest, like I want to be able to be transparent, again, using that word. It's what I talk about. So bear with me in 2023. I may say some shit that you don't want to hear or agree with, but you know what? Here's what I have to say to that. You can either disagree and let me know in the comments, and then we can have a conversation about it. As long as it's reasonable, it's not just like hate-filled, all caps shit. Or, you can just realize like, oh, Lance has a different perspective than me. And you know what? I'm going to continue to listen to See-Through because it's a way for me to hear an alternative opinion and avoid the echo chambers of, only hearing the same thing over and over again. Maybe stuff I'll say that you don't agree with. Maybe it's just a good way for you to be exposed to alternative opinions, or you can just not listen anymore. I make this content myself. I do it for free in my bedroom. I fund everything, and with that logic, I should be able to talk about whatever I want to talk about. That's the beauty of being an independent creator like I am. So, that's just a warning for you, for those people who listen and are fans of the podcast. I hope you'll have my back, and I hope if I say something that you disagree with, I hope that you'll be able to bear with me and just kind of work with me on things because, I'm learning. We're all learning. Let's quit pretending that we know everything and we know we're right on everything. With that said, I must be saying some things right because I received this really amazing sweet card in the mail. This card meant a lot to me, and I would like to share it with you, if you don't mind. Dear Lance, as I look back on the year 2022, I'm feeling grateful for the people who helped me through it. People like you. Funny fate would bring us together, but I'm happy it did. Means a lot to have someone who I can commiserate with on this journey that is RP. I think for the first time since I was diagnosed, I feel hope and excitement about what comes next for me. I'm certain our meeting has a lot to do with this change. May 2023 be our happiest and healthiest year yet. Yeah, that card meant a lot to me. And if you're the person who sent me that card, I hope you don't mind me reading it. And thank you again. I know I've talked to you since then, but thank you again. But these kind of connections that I make through this podcast are the reason why I do it. I personally get so much out of these episodes, but it's nice to kind of build a community of like-minded people, you know. I'm appreciative for everyone that I've met and talked to so far on this podcast, and I'm excited to meet more people and build this community even bigger. That's what See Through is all about. Yeah, I just want to share some positivity. That message meant a lot to me. On that note, talking about things we might disagree with, Stanford recently put out a list for words you should avoid, and I wanted to cover some of them. More specifically, the ableist words that were covered in that list. And I'm going to talk about if I agree or disagree. So let's read those. All right. Sunglasses are off. I was feeling too self-conscious. I was feeling, that everyone's going to perceive me as being a douche for wearing sunglasses an entire episode. So the glasses are on, and I'll just have to deal with the eye strain. Here we go. This is from the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative, which is a multi-phase, multi-year project to address harmful language in IT at Stanford. It says the goal of the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language. They say they are not attempting to assign levels of harm to the terms on the site, and we are also not attempting to address all informal uses of language. This website focuses on potentially harmful terms used in the United States, starting with a list of everyday language and terminology. Our suggested alternatives are in line with those used by peer institutions and within the technology community. It even has a warning, content warning. This website contains language that is offensive or harmful. Please engage at your own pace. That's kind of funny, right? Like, obviously this list is going to cover language that you shouldn't say, but yet in this climate we're in, you even have to give a warning on a document that was made to tell people what not to say, because people might get offended just by reading it. That's kind of where we're at, I guess. So, I don't blame them for having that. But yeah, I wanted to talk specifically about, ableist language. For those of you who don't know what ableist means, it means you're discriminatory to disabled people. It means you think that non-disabled people are superior to disabled people. Or as this document says, ableist language is language that is offensive to people who live with disabilities and or devalues people who live with disabilities. The unintentional use of such terms furthers the belief that people who live with disabilities are abnormal. So let's dig into the list. How I'll do this is I'm going to read out the words that Stanford is suggesting that we do not say anymore. And then I'm going to also read what they say you should call them. And I'm going to go through all the words that involve ableism, like I talked about. And then I'll share my thoughts on certain words or my overall take on if I agree, disagree, etc. So I'm going to read through the list now. Let's start it. So instead of using addict, consider using person with a substance use disorder. Instead of using addicted, consider using hooked and devoted. Instead of using basket case, use nervous. Instead of using blind review, consider using anonymous review. Instead of using blind study, consider using masked study. Instead of using committed suicide, consider using died by suicide. Instead of using confined to a wheelchair, use person who uses a wheelchair. Instead of using crazy, consider using surprising or wild. Instead of using cripple or crippled, use person with a disability. Instead of using crippled, use disabled, impaired, or weakened. Instead of using dumb, consider using non-vocal, non-verbal. Instead of using handicapped parking, consider using accessible parking. Instead of using handicapped, consider using person with a disability. Instead of using handicapped space, consider using accessible space. Instead of using insane, consider using surprising or wild. Instead of using the word lame, consider using the words boring or uncool. Instead of using the word mentally ill, consider using person living with a mental health condition. Instead of using OCD, consider using detail-oriented. Instead of using paraplegic, consider using person with a spinal cord injury or person who is paralyzed. And instead of using quadriplegic, consider using person with a spinal cord injury or person who is paralyzed. Wow, this list is almost over. Instead of using the word retard, consider using person with a cognitive disability, person with autism, neurodivergent person. Instead of using retarded, I feel like I'm going to get in trouble just for saying it. Consider using boring or uncool. Instead of using sanity check, consider using confidence check, coherence check, fact check. Instead of using spaz, consider using clumsy. Instead of using stand-up meeting, consider using quick meeting. Instead of using tone deaf, consider using an unenlightened. Instead of using walk-in, consider using drop-in, open office. Instead of using wheelchair bound, consider using person who uses a wheelchair. That's a long list, but I wanted to cover all of them in case you were wondering. You can also find the entire list. I'll provide a link in the show description. Let's talk about a few of the words, like blind study, consider using masked study. I think it's a little sensitive. I don't know how many out there, I would love to know people's thoughts on these. Like, do you think these words are good? Do you think this list is helpful, or do you think it's just trying to control how people speak too much? Like, do you think using the word blind study is actually offensive? Or blind review? Like, I don't personally think it is, but someone out there does, apparently. And apparently we're supposed to modify our entire language for the most sensitive people on the planet. There's some of these words I already knew about, like, that you shouldn't say, like handicapped. Like, I never hear, I've interviewed, over 70 people, and I think the word handicap has never been used. So I think that word's kind of already phased out. And the context for that is using person first language helps to not define people by just one of their characteristics. So, so for example, handicapped, you would say, instead of handicapped, you would say person with a disability. That makes sense. Some of these I say like myself, right? Like, I still say insane. Like, I'll be like, that's insane. But if you're actually insane, I doubt like people using the word insane is high on your list of priorities of what you need to focus on. Some of these I'll probably try to phase out, but some of these I'm just going to ignore. Some of these I agree with. Like, one I agree with would be, wheelchair bound. That's shitty. You're bound. Like, when people say bound to something, it means like it makes it seem, it's almost like they're in prison or something like that. They're bound to this, they're bound to that, they're chained to it. But it's like, I don't know. It's just kind of a dramatic word in my opinion. Paraplegic, quadriplegic, I didn't know that you're not supposed to describe that. I thought, those were just descriptive words. Like, for example, I have RP, paraplegic and quadriplegic, I thought were just words to describe, what the disability is. But, a person with a spinal cord injury, that's fine. A lot of these is just person first language, which I do anyways. OCD, that's when people say a lot. They're like, oh, I'm so OCD, when they're talking about just organizing their desk. It's like, just say you're organized. You're not actually OCD. Dumb. Everyone says that's dumb, but they're saying to not use that. And this is kind of silly, right? Because it's saying instead of using dumb, right? They're saying consider using non-vocal, non-verbal. But let's replace that. So if I'm talking about someone made a bad decision, right? Someone made a not smart decision. I'm calling it dumb. Or that, the line in the store was dumb long. Or this line is dumb. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to share these words with you because, this is how it is these days. And, it's a minefield out there walking around, and you're bound to step on something every now and then in this climate we're in. And as a podcaster, I tend to analyze the words I say publicly more than most people do. So I find lists like these fascinating because obviously, again, like I talked about, I'm a people pleaser, so I don't want to piss people off. But you know what? At the same time, I don't want to be like chained to and afraid to talk about things I want to talk about or unintentionally say something offensive. It's like, I think people know the intent of things, and if they're negative or positively intended to offend someone. But yeah, I don't know. This list was interesting. It got a lot of there's some controversy on this. A lot of people were posting about it on social media and YouTube about kind of making fun of the words, and some people even made challenges. They were like, they're basically saying, fuck this list. Try to use as many words as you can in a paragraph that are from this list. That's interesting too, because it's like people don't like rules. People don't like being told what to do or what to say or what they can't say. You make a list like this, it's supposed to be helpful, but in the end, it kind of makes people rebel because they're like, you can't tell me what to do. And then in the end, it's like this language, some of these words will probably be intentionally used, like I just talked about. So I don't know how you approach, changing words. I think words can't really be quickly just deleted from people's vocabularies. I think the way you change people's vocabularies is slow and over time. So I think, step one is just, if you really want to change language like this, I think you got to introduce it. So they introduced it, but if it will stick, I don't know. But only time will tell where language goes and what's considered, offensive and not offensive. And, there are certain words in the past that weren't offensive, but now are offensive, or were offensive, but now are not offensive. So I don't know, language is ever changing, but in 2023, which I'm talking about in this episode, these are the words that Stanford says you should avoid. What do you think? Let me know what you think about this list. All right, now moving on. Let's keep this episode moving. Let's talk about New Year's resolutions. And let's be real. Most New Year's resolutions involve weight loss, exercise, and diet changes. And I'm going to spare you from, pep talks and how I plan to get in the best shape of my life, which actually is a goal of mine for this year. And instead, I'm going to cover the things that will keep everyone, including myself, from hitting those markers. And those things are vices. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's tobacco or smoking. Some people, it's sugar. For some people, it's screen time. So maybe if I explain how these specific vices affect our health, our entire body, and more specifically our eyes, because that's where I'm really interested. Maybe this extra knowledge of how it actually harms us will, kind of kickstart your desire to boost up your health and focus and hone in on your health, and maybe kind of phase out some of these vices that we all have in a healthy way. And I'm not a health professional, so disclaimer, take what I say with a grain of salt. And most of this is from articles I'm going to be referencing. I'll have links to all the articles I reference in the show description. So first topic is alcohol. Let's talk about booze and boozing it up, which I've been doing the past 2 weeks. Lots of booze in the last 2 weeks. So I'm currently doing a dry January. So wish me luck for that. So, but yeah, let's talk about alcohol and how it affects vision. All right. So this article was on all about vision. So alcohol and your vision. The effect of alcohol on your eyes and vision depends on many factors, including how much, how often, and even what you drink. It can have both short and long-term visual effects, including blurry vision, double vision, and dry eye. Even the occasional drink can affect your eyes in some way. So I'm not going to read this article word by word, but I am going to cover, each talking point. So at this point, they're going to talk about the short-term effects of alcohol on the eyes and sight. Bigger pupils and heavy drinking, essentially saying drinking large amounts of alcohol may temporarily but significantly increase the size of your pupils. I didn't know that. Varies from person to person. Color vision impairment. It says research has shown that color vision gets worse an hour to 2 hours after drinking alcohol. They did studies where people drank and did worse on color vision tests. That's interesting. Double vision, blurry vision. We all know that if you have, basically when you're hammered, you start seeing double. It says drinking alcohol can cause double vision. While double vision from drinking is a temporary effect, this is just one of the reasons that drinking and driving is so dangerous. And the number of drinks it takes to get to that level varies based on sex, weight, and other factors. For example, it may only take 2 drinks in an hour for a 100-pound woman to experience blurred vision, or up to 5 drinks an hour for like a 240-pound man. Dry eyes. Drinking causes dry eyes. I didn't know that. A large study investigating the effect of alcohol on dry eye disease found that women have a significantly higher risk of experiencing dry eyes compared to men. It says drinking alcohol did not cause an increase in dry eye symptoms for men. Poor night vision in drinking. It says a Journal of Ophthalmology study found that night vision gets worse after drinking in both men and women. The more alcohol the subjects drank, the worse their vision became under low light conditions. They saw halos and starbursts, had difficulty seeing contrast, and experienced longer recovery time after a bright light was shined in their eyes. You know what? That sounds like RP. So for my listeners out there who don't have RP or vision loss, maybe to experience RP, maybe you just need to get blackout drunk. Nah, do not do that. I'm joking. That sounds like RP, Yeah, vision became worse under low light. They saw halos and starbursts. I see those right now. For example, if you didn't know, I always have floaters and strobe lights going constantly. So, I notice that when I drink, I feel like I can see better, but I think that's not true. I think my brain is just tricking me into thinking that I'm more relaxed maybe. All right, now let's get into the long-term effects, because these are like the real effects. So like the short term is just, if you're an occasional drinker, that's what you're going to experience while drunk. That's fine. Everyone's going to have a drink. But the long-term effects of alcohol, so if you're, abusing alcohol, it's going to affect you in the long term, which I think is more important to focus on. So let's cover the long-term effects. Since alcohol may also affect your eyesight in the long term, going beyond temporary symptoms to influencing your likelihood to develop serious eye conditions. I already have a serious eye condition, so I don't want any more. So let's hear how alcohol will affect it. All right, first bullet point, alcohol and cataracts. The risk of developing age-related cataracts changes based on the amount of alcohol a person drinks. An optometry and vision science study found that moderate drinking may have a protective effect against cataracts. There you go. Moderate drinking can actually help you. So this is how complicated these studies can be. That same study also found an increased risk of developing cataracts among heavy drinkers. So those who drink more than 2 drinks a day. If you drink more than 2 drinks a day, basically what I'm telling you is you're increasing your risk for cataracts. And as someone with RP, I'm already at risk for cataracts. And I have a few actually in the premature stages or early stages, so that I actually have to monitor. So I already know heavy drinking is not good for me. Here's another reason for me to kind of monitor my alcohol intake. Moving on, alcohol and macular degeneration. There may be an association between increased alcohol consumption and a form of advanced age-related macular degeneration. However, simply reducing alcohol intake may not be enough to prevent that. More research needs to be done. Both of my grandfathers have age-related macular degeneration. I did a 23andMe test. They told me that I am highly likely to have that, which essentially affects your central vision. So I got RP, and then I have age-related macular degeneration possibly coming up in the future when I'm old. So I think it's pretty safe to say that I'm going to be a blind old man. So got that to look forward to. And last but not least, it says heavy drinking and long-term alcoholism can cause optic neuropathy, which means, you're damaging the optic nerve, which connects the eye and the brain. So common symptoms of that is loss of visual acuity, reduced color vision, and your pupils responding differently to light. So I think it's safe to say that alcohol is not good for your body overall. Everyone knows that, but maybe you've been sleeping on how it affects your vision. And as someone with RP, I like to know what's affecting my vision. And as someone who likes to drink, it's just nice to know what I'm putting in my body, like I said. So let's talk about how smoking affects our vision. Vision loss, blindness, and smoking. Smoking is as bad for your eyes as it is for the rest of your body. If you smoke, you can develop serious eye conditions that cause vision loss or blindness. Two of the greatest threats to your eyesight are macular degeneration and cataracts. I just talked about, both of those with the alcohol topic I covered. On that note, I want to cover the stat that I found that blew my mind. It says, if you smoke, you are twice as likely to develop age-related macular degeneration compared to people who do not smoke. Twice as likely. It's huge numbers. And you are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop cataracts compared to people who do not smoke. So kind of like alcohol, if you're doing long-term alcohol effects and you're doing long-term, smoking and nicotine, tobacco products, you are significantly increasing your chance for age-related macular degeneration, which again affects your central vision. And you're also bumping your chances of getting cataracts up way higher. So smoking, no go. You already knew that. It's kind of a no-brainer at this point with how much information is out there in terms of why you shouldn't smoke. But again, I just find it interesting on how it, in particular affects the eyes. Because I think with smoking, people are really focused on the lungs and how it affects the rest of the body there. But they're not thinking about how it affects the whole body as a whole, including your vision. Quit smoking. Quit smoking. It's bad for you. This is one that for all of you people who don't drink or smoke or live that rowdy party lifestyle, this one's for you because I know for a fact this is going to pertain to you because everyone ingests sugar, that sweet nectar. This article is from Medical News Today. Again, I'll have a link in the description. But, when a person has diabetes, they have high levels of blood sugar. If glucose levels remain high, many health issues can arise. Managing these levels can reduce the risk of excess blood sugar causing damage across the body. So, what I wanted to talk about was, sugar in relation to the eyes. Diabetes increases the risk of a number of eye problems, some of which can lead to vision loss. So, again, as someone with retinitis pigmentosa, I'm losing my vision, So what I'm reading is if I treat my body poorly and eat too much sugar and develop diabetes, that I'm going to fuck up my vision even more than I already am. So I don't want to do that. I was born with RP. I was born with this genetic condition that's making me lose my vision. I have nothing to do with that. Out of my control. But you know what I do have control over? I do have control over the amount of sugar I put in my body. I do have control over the amount of alcohol I put in my body. I do have control over if I smoke cigarettes or vape. I'm able to decide what I put in my body. So I'm okay with the fact that I was born with RP. I really am, honestly. Like, a lot of work has been done for me to feel that way. But I feel fine with that. There's nothing I can do. I think it's not healthy to feel shame or guilt towards something that you can't control. I don't think that's productive. But I will say this. If I ate so much candy or cake or drank a lot of soda and ended up getting diabetes and ended up losing my vision from that, that'd be a hard pill to swallow, because that means that I made that happen. Part of the beauty of having a rare disease is mentally we know we had nothing to do with it. So, I feel for those people if you're listening and you have, diabetes or something like that. I know there's a lot of factors that go into, who and how you get diabetes, but, I feel for you if you have, done harm to your body, through your choices. So, let me get off my high horse here and get back to the article. Diabetes increases the risk of a number of eye problems, some of which can lead to vision loss. Short-term problems include blurred vision due to high blood sugar. Long-term complications include glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, macular edema, or cataracts. Back to that again. Diabetic retinopathy literally causes blindness. Glaucoma is going to increase your pressure in your eyes, which can cause severe pain and vision issues. And cataracts is going to make your usable vision blurry. So that's what sugar can do to your vision with too much of it. So definitely you want to monitor your sugar intake. Again, all this is about moderation. You don't want to overdo anything. Anything that's bad for you, you can do in moderation, I guess. I don't know. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. My point is you should avoid doing things that is bad for you, but it's up to you. I'm just telling you, there's only so far you can take certain things. So let's keep this list going. I was just talking about sugar and how that can cause, vision related issues. Also, when you eat a lot of sugar, you gain a lot of weight. Speaking of weight gain, if you push that to a certain limit, you're going to become obese. And apparently there's a strong link between obesity and disabilities. So I want to share some quick stats with you that I found on the CDC website that pertains to people with disabilities and obesity. Here are those stats. Children and adults with mobility limitations and intellectual or learning disabilities are at greatest risk for obesity. Another stat is 20% of children 10 through 17 years of age who have special healthcare needs are obese compared with 15% of children of the same ages without special healthcare needs. So 20% of children 10 through 17 with healthcare needs are obese. That's a high number. So if you have healthcare needs, you have a 1 in 5 chance of being obese if you're through the ages of 10 through 17. Last stat here is annual healthcare costs of obesity that are related to disability are estimated at approximately $44 billion. Obviously, that means that a lot of health complications arise from being obese, which means you're going to be spending money at hospitals for healthcare, kind of solving the damage you're doing to your body, which means that the health industry actually is profiting a lot off of disabilities and obesity. But, it's not just people with disabilities, though. Here it says more than 1/3 of adults, which is more than 72 million people, are obese in the United States. That's so many people. So if you're struggling with obesity and weight gain, you're obviously not the only one. A lot of people are. And I'm not shaming you or anything. I'm just telling you that statistically there is a link to obesity and disabilities. So if you are disabled, just know you are more at risk for becoming obese. So practice, healthy habits, diet and exercise to prevent obesity, which means avoiding sugar, which can cause the diabetic problems, which affect your whole body and your eyes. You are what you eat. That's a classic phrase, but there's a lot of truth in it. And this article ends talking about the challenges facing people with disabilities. It says people with disabilities can find it more difficult to eat healthy, control their weight, and be physically active. This might be due to a lack of healthy food choices, difficulty chewing or swallowing food, medications that can contribute to weight gain, weight loss, and changes in appetite, physical limitations that can reduce a person's ability to exercise, pain, a lack of energy, A lack of accessible environments, for example, sidewalks, parks, and exercise equipment that can enable exercise, and a lack of resources, for example, money, transportation, and social support from family, friends, neighbors, and community members. So yeah, that's the common, challenges people with disabilities face in terms of why they seem to, put on weight or become obese. If you are disabled, I think you have to be creative. I think you have to be cognizant and intentional with your choices to avoid, these common pitfalls and, to protect your health. Like I said, you can't control that you're disabled, but you can control other, extraneous things that are going on with your life in terms of your diet and exercise. So if you can't exercise, maybe be more mindful of your diet. There's little things you can do. And I know there's not a one size fits all solution to avoiding, weight gain and obesity, but at least think about it. Maybe you can figure out ways to improve your situation. I think if you're feeling healthy, you're feeling good, you're going to be, a happier person. All right. So I've talked about alcohol. I've talked about smoking, and I've talked about sugar and obesity and just overeating. But let's talk about something let's talk about something that's not being ingested, or at least, digested. Let's talk about screen time. As an independent creator, I'm always on my phone. I'm recording episodes. I'm editing my episodes. I'm always staring at a screen. I'm a professional video editor. I make a living editing video. So again, when I'm working, I'm staring at screens. My whole life is screens. The irony of it all is once I'm done working, I still find myself, mindlessly scrolling, Instagram or TikTok, or YouTube. With that said, I want to talk about screen time and how it's linked to being nearsighted and how it can cause myopia in younger people. This article is on Science Daily, and it says screen time linked to risk of myopia in young people. High levels of exposure of screen time can increase risk of short-sightedness by up to 80%. This was done by Angela Ruskin University in 2021. And it says a new study has revealed a link between screen time and higher risk and severity of myopia and short-sightedness in children and young adults. It says a new study published in one of the world's leading medical journals has revealed a link between screen time and a higher risk and severity of myopia or short-sightedness in children and young adults. It says the authors examined more than 3,000 studies in investigating smart device exposure in myopia in children and young adults aged between 3 months old and 33 years old. After analyzing and statistically combining the available studies, the authors revealed that high levels of smart device screen time, such as looking at a mobile phone, is associated with around a 30% higher risk of nearsightedness or myopia. And when combined with excessive computer risk, which is what I just talked about, I'm always on my phone or computer, that risk rose to around 80%. So that's not good. This research comes as millions of children around the world have spent substantial time using remote learning methods following the closure of schools due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I didn't think about that. Yeah, everything's online now, right? It said around half the global population is expected to have myopia by 2050. So it is a health concern that is escalating quickly. Our study is the most comprehensive yet on this issue and shows a potential link between screen time and myopia in young children. So yeah, that's very interesting. As someone who's always on a computer with RP, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, am I pushing my eyes too far? I always have tired and strained eyes from my editing. And now there's articles, like this that kind of prove that it does affect you. It talks about young adults, but it also talks to 33 years old. I'm 32. So basically I was right. Not only do I need to monitor my screen time for my mental health, I need to monitor my screen time for my vision. Another thing to worry about, huh? All right, so I just covered alcohol, smoking, sugar, obesity, screen time. Those cover a lot of, the common vices that we all, fall victim to. And after, covering these topics, I think all this goes to show is that when thinking about your New Year's resolutions and why you want to lose weight or get in shape or this or that, I think the common thought goes towards vanity. A lot of people want to look better. It goes beyond just vanity. It's about your overall health and how your body is operating and running. You want to treat your body like a machine. You want it to be a fine-tuned machine. If you're someone like me with RP or experiencing vision loss, you can't deny the fact that the eyes are just one part of our body. And just because we have failing eyes doesn't mean we have to have a failing body. And it's up to us to make conscious decisions that will impact, how our body operates and maybe even impact how our vision deteriorates, or if we unintentionally add negative deterioration to our vision through our choices of what we put in our body. And the beauty of all this is if you attack your health from you want to optimize your body's health, you will solve a lot of other problems you're facing. So it's all connected, and it just takes some discipline and some education and knowledge on why you should do it versus just thinking about, I want to have a six pack so I can post a thirst trap to Instagram, get some ladies DMing me, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my 2 cents in all of this. And I want to remind everyone, again, go buy some merch. The link's in the show description. I have t-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page. There's 18 exclusive videos on there waiting for you that you can only watch on Patreon. The link to join that is in the show description. By buying merch or joining my Patreon, you are helping support this independent podcast that I produce here in my bedroom. And I definitely appreciate it if you do either one of those. If not, there's free ways to support the podcast. Make sure you've subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media. The handle is at SeeThroughPod. And that handle covers Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. Links to all my social media is in the description. If you're streaming this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast on whatever streaming platform you're listening on. And if you really want to help me out, leave a review. I love reading them, by the way. All of that helps me tremendously and will make this year great, just like 2022 was. I'm excited to be here. Hopefully this episode will help you focus on your health more this year, as I think we all can find ways to improve our health. I hope I didn't preach too much to you in this episode. And with that said, that's the end of this episode. Until next time, stay transparent, everyone.